And of course, I'm joined by the Scott Parker. To my Vincent company, it's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Justin, we should give the listeners full disclosure that you may be slightly dizzy heading into this podcast.
Yeah, if I slur my words at any point, I'm not on any medication. I'm not drunk either. It's I had a bump in my car yesterday.
For a change.
For a change. Yeah, no, I had a bump in my car yesterday. I say bump. Someone drove into the back of me while I was static. So as people might know if they've ever been through that, it's not a comfortable moment. So I have a mild head injury, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, I was sort of hoping you'd turn up to this in like a Terry Butcher style, thing around your head, just to really drive it home for people. But we can't win all the time, can we?
A wrap around the head and a neck brace, that'd have been perfect.
And blood pouring out your head. Justin, you only had a concussion. How's that happened? But yeah, it's good to hear that you're all right, Justin. And I'm sure you'll be in 100% condition to talk about what is another ridiculous round of championship fixtures. Because, this league, honestly, it never fails to amaze us, does it? We'll begin with Sheffield United, who have slipped up again. It's after they were beaten 1-0 at home by Millwall. Sheffield United have gone from 8 wins in 10 to back-to-back losses, Justin.
It's astonishing, isn't it? It's a literal drop-off, which I definitely did not see coming, especially during the international break. And then, you bring that into the conversation, the context of their form, and then being almost faultless leading into this 2-game spell. Yeah, the cracks have really started to appear.
Yeah, they really, really have. We were saying at the weekend that they were really, really poor against Oxford, and while they were sloppy here as well, they'd be wondering how they did not get something. The number of great chances they had. It's amazing they didn't put at least one of them away, but it's another loss for Sheffield United, and it's another costly loss at the worst possible time, really, isn't it? Chris Wilder wasn't best pleased with the referee Sam Allison after this one. When asked whether his side should have had a penalty for a foul on Arnel Ahmedhodzic, he said 100%, I'm not a fan of the referee. I wasn't a fan of him last season when he refereed us against Luton and was asking for Ross Barkley's shirt. I always think he wants to be the star of the show, so I knew what was coming and I wasn't surprised. So I'm just kind of reading between the lines here, Justin. I don't think he's a big fan of this referee.
Wait, what? What makes you say that? I think firstly bringing up something that happened last season is completely normal. No, it feels like I think that's an actual depiction of the pressure that Sheffield United are under at the moment, because Chris Wilder bit at supporters at the weekend against Oxford, and obviously apparently didn't applaud the fans after this game as well. But rather than actually talking about the penalty incident, he takes the attention away from the actual penalty incident, which I believe was a penalty, by the way, because Ahmedhodzic's shirt was literally being ripped off him by Jake Cooper. It's quite astonishing how that wasn't seen. It was a poor decision. But for me, I think Chris Wilder just needs to move on, acknowledge that it was a penalty, it should have been a penalty, and not go full salt, because that's the Chris Wilder that I question, not the Chris Wilder that we've had.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying, Justin. We're sort of seeing elements of the Wilder from the previous 3 seasons, previous to this season, which we don't want to see, do we? Next thing you know, he'll be, slagging off referees for eating sandwiches and what have you. And I think someone at Sheffield United just needs to say, Chris, breathe, because if that happens, then Sheffield United are in a world of trouble, aren't they? But they almost are in a world of trouble anyway, because this result has left them 2 points behind Leeds and Burnley. It is interesting because if it wasn't for Sheffield United's points deduction, all 3 teams will be level on 85 points now, which would be absolutely insane, wouldn't it? But it's not to be. We mentioned on Sunday about maybe the pressure perhaps starting to get to the Sheffield United players, and I think there was a lot of evidence in this game, Justin, that was the case. Chris Wilder even admitted as much afterwards. I'm feeling this pressure at this time of the season with what's at stake is understandable, but if you let it get to you, then you've only got yourself to blame, because it's who handles it best ultimately, isn't it? Because all these teams will be feeling pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Every team will be going through the exact same thing. Maybe Leeds is a little bit more magnified than other clubs because it's Leeds, and it's that self-fulfilling prophecy that we speak about. But with this, it almost seems needless. I think what's really ramped up the pressure is the fact that Sheffield United have gone behind in both of their obviously previous two games. A bit of a faux pas, especially if you've got a defence as good as Sheffield United, and they have been as good as they have been all season. So as I say, going behind in both games, I think just ramps up the pressure. Didn't really get into the flow of things against Oxford, but as we quite rightly say here, they had a lot of really good chances and they missed them. They really, really struggled to make an impact in front of goal. They got into really good areas time after time. Just wasn't enough. And with the chances that they were missing and how they're missing them, that's how you can sort of say the pressure is really building on them. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Tyrese Campbell, but he completely fluffed a shot about 6 yards away from the goal, which almost felt easier to hit the target with. And I think that's the sort of situation we're dealing with at the moment, but they need to dust off and go again because they cannot afford to drop any more points.
Well, by and large, I think they've dealt with that pressure pretty well up until now. But I think also some players just generally aren't playing as well as they could. I particularly look at someone like Ben Brereton Diaz. He's got 1 goal in 9 games, was subbed off before the hour mark in his last 2 games. Tom Cannon, he's had a pretty disastrous start to his Sheffield United career, hasn't he, considering he cost £10 million, 11 appearances now, keeps getting benched and is still waiting for his first goal. I don't think the defence is looking as solid as it was earlier in the season. I mean, Millwall should have scored another in this one, it's worth mentioning, but Mihajlo Ivanovic soiled himself when he was 1-on-1 despite having all the time in the world. So, yeah, a very worrying couple of performances for the Blades. We thought it might just be a one-off weekend last weekend, but this was not the performance we wanted to see in response to that. They have got Plymouth next, which is come at a good time, but if they don't get a win there, then the alarm bells will really, really start ringing, Justin.
It's a good point. It really is a good point. Plymouth are coming off the back of a poor result themselves, so they're obviously going to be in low confidence heading into the weekend. I wouldn't say it's a free hit for Sheffield United to go out and get 3 points, so it's not an easy 3 points, I should say, but it's as close to right. This will help us get back on the train, sort of thing. So they really, really need to get the points. But if they're not performing under pressure now, the pressure I think in getting 3 points against Plymouth is massive. It's massive, and if they're struggling to deal with it now, will they struggle to deal with it against Plymouth? Yeah, questions.
Justin, I had one of those occasions earlier where I had to do a double take at the league table. Millwall are 9th. Only 5 points off the playoffs. How did this happen? I'll tell you how, because back-to-back wins, the 2 teams above them losing, but still, I just hadn't considered them at all for the playoffs for quite some time, and now it looks like they might be back in contention for the top 6.
This, you'd say, to look, this is something I wanted to discuss at the weekend, but time just did not allow it, and I've got it in my show notes. I will share it if anyone wants any evidence. I'm not jumping on a bandwagon. I wanted to put them in the conversation for sure. I think their form, despite putting themselves into playoff contention, has been a bit up and down. Win loss, and then back-to-back wins. But back-to-back wins can propel you anywhere in this league. But I think these 3 points here against Sheffield United, I think proves that Alex Neil is once again a manager that is very capable at this level. CC Stoke City, just putting that one out there.
It's funny how whichever team we're talking about, Stoke always seem to be at the receiving end of the joke somehow.
It's quite astonishing because obviously Alex Neil did a pretty honking job at Stoke, but who hasn't? And he's quite literally gone on to a better thing like everybody else. But if we're going to be direct with Millwall, they had a positive January. The recruitment was a little bit different. They reduced the average age of their squad, got a younger profile. I think they play with a little bit more intensity. I do think Neil Harris deserves credit for instilling some of those habits earlier on this season. But for me, they have played their way into contention. It's just whether or not they've got enough going forwards to get themselves into top 6. But with teams slipping up like Coventry, I know they had a dramatic win, but they've lost back-to-back games. Middlesbrough just come off the back of a loss to Leeds, and West Brom cannot win for anything. So that puts Millwall in contention. So I think if they're going to get into that top six, it's going to be teams, they're going to have to do them a favour. But I think if they can have another good summer next season, I really do fancy them under Alex Neil.
If they beat Middlesbrough this weekend, then they'd be massively in contention.
It's become a 6-pointer, hasn't it?
Oh, massively. It definitely has. The following 3 games after that are all against sides with virtually nothing to play for as well. So maybe they are back in contention. I mean, they'd have to win nearly all those games to genuinely get a playoff place. But it is worth pointing out they have Burnley away on the final day. So, yeah, that's up for anyone to decide whether they think they're genuinely in contention or not. But anything can happen on the final day, and anything can happen between now and the final day, because I didn't expect them to get anything at Bramall Lane. So we'll see. Millwall are one of those sides who always seem to flourish when their backs up against the wall, don't they, Justin? So maybe they are that side who seem to always have a late charge at the end of the season and actually get there. We'll see. Burnley failed to win for just the 3rd time in 11 games away at Derby County, 0-0. It finished there, and surprisingly, it was Burnley who were lucky to escape with a point. Derby had much the better chances, Justin.
It was a game of few chances, but Derby certainly edged them, and I think heading into this, Derby were always going to be awkward for Burnley because of how they played. Their ability to out-Burnley them, their ability to make things difficult, and I think if you don't allow this Burnley team space, then they're going to struggle, which is something in the armoury of Scott Parker that he needs to develop, because to get 41 games into the season and to be second in the league despite having this glaring gap in your how you play is quite incredible, and I think it just lends to the good positive work that has been done so far. But yeah, as I say, I think this was always going to be an awkward game for them. Just didn't expect it to be as awkward as it was. Maybe it was the John Eustace effect, ex-Blackburn. He already played Burnley twice. He knew exactly how to play against them, sort of thing. But that would be bringing in rivalry drama for no reason.
I don't think there's no reason that you can't bring that in, Justin. But look, I hinted at this on Sunday. A team like Derby are Burnley's worst nightmare. If you stay organised and don't mind sitting deep, very often this season, they found it difficult breaking teams like that down, but it wasn't like Derby parked the bus throughout the game for long periods. They battered Burnley. Like, I've not seen Derby batter a team all season, mainly because Paul Warren was in charge for a lot of it, but the 10 minutes either side of half-time in particular, Burnley genuinely could not get out of their own half. I could not believe what I was seeing at this game. And you would have struggled to guess who was the team at the top of the table and who was the one fighting to stay up after that. After the first 20 minutes onwards, really. Because Derby were genuinely the better side here, and Burnley were just so poor. If Matt Clark had a shout from Jerry Yates for the chance in the 91st minute, Derby would have won. But ultimately, Burnley could have lost this. And with Sheffield United losing again, even though Burnley were perhaps lucky to escape with a point, this is a missed opportunity for Scott Parker's side to create even more breathing space for themselves, Justin, in the top 2.
Well, yeah, I think whenever a team you're competing with loses and you don't pick up 3 points, it's a missed opportunity. But I think if you reflect at the end of the season and you reach your objectives, this game might be one of those games where you look at it and go, that was a good point. Because Burnley weren't at their best, and they did have to ride their luck. And yes, they did miss the opportunity because obviously Blaze dropping points, but they do retain their momentum for me. So whilst they couldn't take advantage and win the game, they didn't play particularly well, and they come away with another clean sheet and a point, and their mentality doesn't drop; they keep going. So I don't think it's the worst result in the world for Burnley. It could have been better, but I think it could have been worse as well.
Could have been a lot worse if, as I say, Matt Clark got that shout from Jerry Yates right at the death. But look, I got a lot of stick at the weekend for Burnley fans for saying they haven't been astounding this weekend, which they haven't, this season even. And they weren't here. They were second best to a Derby side fighting to stay up. It was classic Burnley, really, not having a clue what to do when they're coming up against a side who are well organised. And I've been critical of them all season. I think they've been fortunate on many occasions. I think they've been boring on many occasions. And Burnley fans will criticise me for saying that because they are at the top end of the table. But what I'll say to them is this. Guys, with we've been here before with Scott Parker's sides, Fulham, Bournemouth fans. I criticised them under Scott Parker, got a lot of flack for it, and then as soon as he left, they were essentially saying exactly the same as what I've been saying all season. And look, I'll give Burnley full credit because defensively the numbers are astonishing. You can't take anything away from them there, but in possession, they are so unimpressive. And look, they may very well go up this season, but if they do, for me, they will be, without a doubt, one of the poorest sides to get promoted in a long time. And I'm almost certain they'll come straight back down next season because Scott Parker's got a very talented team here, but under his coaching, they are such a tough watch at times, Justin.
They're a tough watch, but they're 41 games in. They've got 85 points. They've only lost 2 games this season. So what can we say to that? I agree with a lot of what you said, but I also disagree with a fair chunk of it as well. Yes, they can be a boring watch, but they're getting results. Yes, they do have a talented team, and I do think the potential in the final third hasn't been maximised this season. But like I said, they are second after 41 games with 85 points on the board. Only conceded 12 this season. It's not a fluke that that's been the case. And I think going into the Premier League, I'm not as certain they'll come straight back down because I think firstly they do need to recruit. But defensively, the teams that are defensively minded tend to fare better in the Premier League, coming from the Championship in the Premier League, than the teams that are all out attack. You look at the chaos of Ipswich, the possession of Southampton and Leicester. Those teams aren't suited to Premier football. Those teams were particularly suitable. But you look at Thomas Frank and Brentford, they went from an attacking team to a defensive counter-attacking team. They had to adapt. And I think with Scott Parker, we've seen this season that they are a lot better, I think, in transition when they are sat back. Because they're so quick and direct at times. So actually, Premier League might suit them better than the Championship because they're not going to come across a team of 11 sitting back for 90 minutes like they did against Derby to an extent. So I disagree with a lot of what he said, and I think we do have to give Scott Parker his flowers this season because I think the defensive numbers are just literally out of this world.
I could not disagree with pretty much everything you've said there, Justin, particularly the Premier League thing. I've not been more convinced in a long time about a team coming straight back down than I have.
But you were convinced about Ipswich staying in the Premier League last season. And it's been
but it's become more and more apparent that the gap between the Premier League and Championship is just astronomically big. And if a team like Ipswich aren't staying up, then we're all buggered. Really.
You say a team like Ipswich, but they went up with a League One team and they signed Championship players. So again,
but they've got a very, very talented manager in Kieran McKenna, and they spent very well in the summer.
I think there's argument to suggest that that's not the case, really.
What's not the case?
That they spent really, really well. There's beside the point from Burnley. We're going to get distracted from the conversation on Burnley because I think, firstly, a parachute payment team that's been up and down, that's yo-yoed a little bit, might fare a lot better than other teams that are going straight up directly. But again, I just think
for Leicester and Southampton, isn't it?
I think respectively, those two are their own cases because of how horrendously run their recruitment has been over the years.
Burnley's wasn't much better a couple of seasons ago, Justin, when they got promoted to the Premier League. And this Burnley under Vincent Kompany were a lot better than Scott Parker was. And keep in mind, Scott Parker's record in the Premier League is pretty abhorrent in itself.
Again, that's true. And yes, Vincent Kompany's Burnley side were better, but again, they got to the Premier League, tried to play the same way and got found out. Scott Parker's done it a bit differently. He's hopefully learned from his past Premier League failings, and that can take Burnley forward.
Let's move on, Justin, because forgetting here what a great result this is for Derby County. And it's actually been a great round of midweek results for them because it had the potential to be a difficult one for them if Burnley beat them. But no one in the bottom 9 won. So there's been very little change in the relegation battle, and I think Derby are edging closer and closer to safety, aren't they, Justin?
Yes and no. I'm still not convinced. Perhaps a missed opportunity for Derby, as it was Burnley here. I think the defeat on Saturday was damaging in the face of this being a good point. But what I think we really need is 2 more wins for me to be really convinced. That is Portsmouth at the weekend is such a huge game. But I think if they can carry this performance into that game against Portsmouth, they'll have a positive outcome. But as I say, I just think with the context of Swansea defeat, I think only it just highlights how tight things are down there, because you just can't afford to slip up. So as it is at the top of the table, you just cannot afford to slip up. And we've seen teams like Hull struggling to gain momentum. I think this point is a good point. But I think 2 more wins are needed for me to really convince that Derby are going to stay up.
I just think so much progress has been made in such a short time under John Eustace that logically there should be at least 3 worse teams than them. That's not always how it pans out, but it obviously stands them in good stead. But the thing we have to point out here is, and it's remarkable that it's panned out this way, but 4 of Derby's final 5 games are against sides in the bottom 8, fellow sides in the bottom 8 for that matter. So that has to be seen as an advantage from their point of view, not because those teams are weak or anything, but because I know they've got everything to play for still. But it means survival is firmly in their hands. And yeah, you're right, it would certainly help if they get a result at Portsmouth this weekend. But I think Derby are in a very good position, particularly because of their recent form as well. So who's top of the league now, I hear you ask, dear listener? It's, of course, Leeds United. A goal in just the second minute from Dan James was enough for them to beat Middlesbrough 1-0. Falling apart? What falling apart, Justin? It's worth saying, in Leeds' previous 5 games, they failed to beat 4 sides in the bottom half of the Championship. So, of course, they went and won at a playoff-chasing Middlesbrough side who had won 5 of their last 7. That makes sense. But if you looked at the stats for this game, Justin, you'd have been forgiven for thinking Middlesbrough battered Leeds here. And they did have chances, but Leeds also had 2 occasions where they scored and it was given as offside. Replay showed they were both clearly onside. And the first one for Ayo Tanaka in particular is an awful decision.
Yeah, it's poor officiating, no question. It's quite telling that obviously we did our YouTube Q&A, so definitely go and watch that. But we spoke about VAR in midweek, which I think is definitely worth a visit, because we discussed its importance and the idea of these decisions being sorted out quickly and accurately. Because these can be really decisive come the end of the season if Leeds drop points here. You know, we've seen how tight it is. Sheffield United on 83 and Burnley and Leeds on 85 points themselves. If Burnley take one of their chances that they created, it could have been a draw or worse for Leeds. But despite that, they did create decent openings, didn't they? Because they opened them up, and poor decision making took those goals away. It's disappointing. The Patrick Bamford one's quite interesting as well, because the linesman surely cannot see Patrick Bamford through the defender. Because it's quite clearly onside. It's just ridiculous. We've seen too many poor decisions with offside goals this season, I think, more so than we've had, I think, in previous years. But 2 in this game is just mad, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fair point, Justin, and I do think. I mean, I'm not a fan of VAR. I'll make that very clear, but I do think what is often forgotten is that VAR can very often get simple clangers like this correct. It's the high-profile things which often, get the scourge of fans from across the country. But, it is a fair point to make. But look, it doesn't really matter because Leeds got the win. Probably should have won by more if it wasn't for 2 controversial goals disallowed. Was it then back to their glittering best? No, but we just needed a positive result here from them, didn't we? And we got that. And the fact they're back top of the league is an unexpected bonus.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't a classic performance. Scoring so early as well, I think in typical Leeds fashion, they do struggle to kill the game. And like I alluded to, Borough had some good chances throughout this. With Borough, I thought their play was actually pretty good. But with that in mind, the games could have been sewn up early if those goals weren't disallowed. Wasn't the case. Scoring 2 minutes in and then sitting on a 1-0 lead, I think, is just very typical of Leeds this season. That's probably where a lot of the critique can come in terms of them not killing games off. But like I said, it's very hard to take judgment from that based on the 2 goals that were wrongfully disallowed. But wins matter at this stage more than performances. You find a way to win, dig in, deal with what Middlesbrough threw at you, and go again into the next game and see if that's had a positive impact that it's needed to have.
It is strange that out of all the teams they've beaten in their recent run of form, it's Middlesbrough. But as I've been bagging on about for weeks, Leeds' remaining games are rather kind. This away trip to Middlesbrough is without a doubt their trickiest game on paper in their final 10 fixtures. So if this is them somewhat getting their act together, then they should get promotion over the line. Like, what's the opposite of falling apart, being pieced back together, Justin? Maybe that's what we're finally seeing.
Like when you break your grandparents' favourite vase, you knock it off while you're playing a bit of football in the house and you have to stitch it all back together poorly.
Is this a personal anecdote?
No, I was a good kid, but I imagine some people have broken things like this. I would. I mean,
you're a bad kid and you're an even naughtier adult. But, with Leeds, we know it's not as simple as that, is it? With them, getting their act together, getting promotion over the line, what have you. But with Sheffield United having their little wobble, Burnley having some tricky-ish games to go, Leeds could fall apart to an extent and still go up, because it's easy to forget they just need to finish above one of those two teams, don't they? Yes, I'm sure they'd like to win the league, but the minimum objective here is just to go up. And it's back in their hands now. Burnley and Sheffield United still have to play each other, lest we forget. It's all about how Leeds approach this next game, really, with regards to finding out whether they've got their act together or not. Justin, we'll have a quick break, but firstly, before that, Justin, 5 in 10. Name 5 managers who managed in the Championship last season.
Neil Warnock. Oh, I've had a head injury, Ryan.
just Neil Warnock, that's all you're doing. You're cashing any chips there. I was considering doing it at the start of the show, but I'm like, that feels a bit harsh when he might be slightly concussed.
Yeah, all I could think about was Huddersfield, and I nearly went Mark Fotheringham, but that feels like such a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And that's literally, this head injury's knocked me back into 2023.
Oh, excellent. So there you go, ladies and gents. Justin Peach has fallen foul to 5 in 10 because he's just waved it in. But that's fine. We'll have a quick break just after that. We'll talk about some more of the midweek action in the Championship, but also Birmingham City's promotion back to the Championship. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. And just before we get back onto the midweek action, we should say a warm welcome back to the Second Tier for the champions of League One. That's because Birmingham City have now officially been promoted back to the Championship after beating Peterborough on Tuesday night. They look set to absolutely piss the League One record for the most points in the season of 103. They're on 95 with 6 games to go. They may even break Reading's record of the most points ever in an English football season of 106. But 95 points with 6 games to go is an astonishing tally, really, Justin, isn't it?
It is. It really, really is. And look, people will talk about the money that was spent, and yes, it is important to include that to provide context. However, winning games over a 46-game season is really difficult. Consistency is hard, though. Consistency is really hard. And while they have the quality that they spent to get promoted as champions, the mentality matters more in a team, and that's the most impressive thing. Mentality over quality, I think, gets you promoted in any league, in any division. And Birmingham and Chris Davis have done a really good job instilling that into a team of new players. It's quite incredible, really.
Yeah, I remember at the start of the season saying, thank God Derby got promoted when they did, because I did not fancy being in League One this season with how competitive it was looking. And so for Birmingham to have done what they've done so comfortably is astonishing. And yes, people will point out the money that they've spent. I understand that. They should be winning the league considering the money they've spent, but it's a lot easier said than done actually doing it, and doing it in the way that they've done it. And the thing that I think often gets forgotten with this, Justin, is we have to remember before this season, Birmingham City fans have had a miserable decade.
That's so true.
Constant relegation battles in the Championship, terrible owners, awful football. So the fans have deserved a season like this where it's been one full of joy. And as mentioned previously on this show, they'll be a team to fear next season. You can't rule them out getting promoted again because they'll be very, very strong heading into the Championship. Possibly one of the strongest teams we've ever seen heading into the Championship.
That's a really important point to make. Birmingham fans have been through it ever since they got relegated from the Premier League in the start of the last decade. A lot of people, or you could argue that almost a generation of fans would have been turned away from the club, or would have turned away from the club because of its turmoil. And I think this stat is quite damning, that the fact that Lukas Djukovic joined the club in 2016. This is the first time he's finished above 17th.
I didn't know that. That's a great stat.
But again, I think it just highlights the shit that Birmingham City fans have had to put up with.
Yeah.
So I know this won't be the case in football, especially not in the modern day that we have now. But give Birmingham City fans their opportunity to celebrate, because they've waited a long time for this. Don't keep bringing up money. Yeah, just let them have it. Come on.
Yeah. I think it's. I don't want this to sound like a slight towards Birmingham City fans, but for me, it's more of a case of this current state of English football that I think this will just become a more regular thing, where you have some clubs with big budgets coming down from the Championship into League One and are able to just spend money freely because the financial restrictions are a lot more lenient there. So I think Birmingham have just kind of exploited that, because that's what every club would do. And can't really blame them for doing that, can you? But congratulations to Birmingham. We look forward to chatting about you next season. Let's talk about the action this season just in Coventry City. They got a dramatic 1-0 victory against Portsmouth thanks to a 94th minute winner from Jamie Patterson. Oh, the scenes here, Justin Peach.
Yeah, the scenes are incredible. It should treat a couple of last-minute winners in this game week, I think, is brilliant. But also, I think, just lends to the chaos we have, or we get at this stage of the season. It's why we bloody love the Championship, Ryan. This is it. It's incredible. Okay, right, the last-minute winner is a last-minute winner. But a last-minute winner, that's a bicycle kick. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's mad. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. There were 22 seconds left on the clock when that went in. And Coventry had spent most of that second half knocking on that door, just not being able to find a way through. Looked destined to be heading towards a goalless draw, but then it was just pure carnage when it went in. And for it to be Jamie Patterson who got it as well, Justin. For those who aren't aware, he's a Coventry lad, born and bred, Coventry fan, but he's 33 now and had never played for the club before signing for them back in February. He had made a handful of sub-appearances off the bench prior to this game, but that was his first goal in a Coventry shirt. What a moment to get it, and what a moment for him.
He's going to talk about that for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter what he's achieved in his career. The fact that he's got his first goal in a season where belief is high for Coventry under Frank Lampard, he deserves his moment. I do think he's an underrated clutch player, by the way, just to throw out modern day terminology. He's a player for the big moments. He's done it for Bristol City, for Swansea. He even had a moment for Derby. He had a couple of moments for Derby, actually. He set up Chris Martin's equaliser against Leeds. That was a dramatic late equaliser. And I think he scored against Birmingham City off the back of the car accident incident, which was a big game for Derby. But he's a really good technician. He always has been a good technician. He's a fan of a club, and as I say, he's just delivered this moment. I don't think anyone on that ground will ever forget, really.
Yeah. Well, it could be a big win for Coventry as well. Back-to-back losses had left some wondering whether they were just running out of steam in their playoff push. Failing to win here certainly wouldn't have helped with dispelling those theories, but they got the victory, and it throws them back into the top six. And with it being so tight up there, Justin, it could be a gigantic 2 points in the grand scheme of things.
It really could. It really could. And I think if you look at how the game sort of spilled out as well here, Portsmouth probably narrowly edged the first half, but Coventry turned up the gears. They reacted to that. Coventry were throwing bodies at everything, and they kept pushing, and eventually that reward is a last-minute winner and a big boost in confidence, especially off the back of a couple of relatively poor defeats from a Coventry perspective, where not really got going in each of those defeats. So, yeah, I think when you put in the context of the win, it's massive, but I think the feel-good factor, I think, can really carry Coventry forward into that next game. That can be worth so much alone. So, yeah, who's 3 points, but the manner of the win, massive.
I mean, I've made my feelings known about Coventry and Frank Lampard for quite some time. I think they've been fortunate on a few occasions, but ultimately, scenes like this, that's what football's all about, isn't it? And with Middlesbrough and West Brom losing, it gives them a good upper hand on those two heading into these final 5 games. Coventry do still have to play both of those sides, by the way, so it's finally poised heading into the final 5 games of the playoff race. Do you see Justin Frank Lampard's been linked with the Southampton job? It's after the unsurprising departure of future pub quiz answer Ivan Juric. Him, Danny Rule, Liam Rosenior and David Wagner. They're supposedly amongst the managers being considered for the role. I will be honest, it might be a pointless conversation because I'm just convinced Danny Rule is going to go to Southampton. But if Coventry don't go up this season, put yourself in Frank Lampard's shoes. Would you rather manage Coventry or Southampton, Justin?
I'm not going to answer that.
Why?
You risk so much, Raf, I think, from that. I think he's in a really good position at Coventry to go. I think Southampton's going to be a bruising job for anyone because they've got to pick up at one of the worst teams in Premier League history. Difficult. Whereas I think Coventry have probably got momentum going into next season. That being said, Southampton will be a parachute payment team. It might be attractive in that regard, but I don't think he's done enough to justify moving yet. I think it would be ridiculous for him to jump ship as well. It would look awful for him from a character point of view, given that he would have jumped ship from his 2 previous championship jobs that have had major impacts on his reputation and his career as a manager. So
2 previous jobs,
obviously. Well, sorry, this one, counting this one, Coventry and Derby. Oh. But I think this link might be, just to extend it a little bit, this link might be a little bit more worrying for Coventry fans than maybe one might let on. Danny Rule has been linked with the RB Leipzig job as well, which again is a downside, bit of an upgrade on the Southampton job. And obviously Liam Rosenior I don't think will leave Strasbourg, considering they have the might of the Chelsea system and they're on the verge of European football. So it's David Wagner or Frank Lampard, which, sorry Saints fans, that's rough.
Well, I was listening to the Football Ramble yesterday, our fellow show here at Stack. I assume everyone must know the Ramble by now. But anyway, they were saying that Lampard would be mad to take the Southampton job, and they were almost saying it was like a step down for him. But I think they're massively underestimating the gap between the Prem and the Championship, which we've seen firsthand, Justin. Yes, I know Southampton are abysmal, but they were shocking. Last time they got relegated and went straight back up. Sheffield United were only slightly better last season than Southampton are now and might go straight back up as well. So I don't think they'll do as badly as people think, and maybe in a slightly better position than Coventry heading into next season if Coventry don't go up. But I just think when you're, from a logistical perspective, if you're Frank Lampard having to go to a completely different set of scenes, different atmosphere, then it wouldn't make much sense, really. Plus, I don't think he's going to go anyway, so it might be a pointless conversation.
If the Frank Lampard effect is a thing, then the gap between the Premier League and Championship would not exist because he's a good enough manager to reduce it.
Yeah. Great. And let's move on, Justin, because we saw another late winner, a 96th minute winner from Hayden Roberts, which saw Bristol City get a dramatic 2-1 win over fellow playoff chasers West Brom. More incredible scenes, Justin.
Just copy and paste what I said here. I saw the winner and I was like, oh, bit of a scruffy goal. It doesn't matter how they go in the 96th minute, by the way. I'm not criticising that. And then you sort of find out it's Hayden Roberts, who is not a goal-scoring left-back by any means. But look, it's just one of the scruffiest goals I've seen, I think, actually. It's hard not to love that moment, those scenes, isn't it? You know, all the media that's come out of the camera pitch side, panning to the fans and the limbs. That's just what last-minute winners do. But yeah, I think it will create a core memory for players, for staff and the fans in the stadium. I think it's very easy to remember the last-minute winners over every other game. I remember a hell of a lot at Derby over the years. So that's what it does. But when you're pushing this hard for the top 6, it means that bit more, which, as I say, you can say for Coventry, but also for Bristol City, who haven't had these moments for a long time. When was the last time Bristol City had this much belief in a season? Maybe under Lee Johnson, prior to their late collapse. But then before that, you've got to go back to when they probably got to the playoffs under Gary Johnson.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Justin. I think got to be pointed out that I have no idea how the goalkeeper Josh Griffiths has let that winner in, because I mean, it's not the first time in recent weeks that their keeper should have been doing better for a goal, but that being West Brom, of course. But this was his first go since being recalled from his loan at Bristol Rovers, so it seems like West Brom have got a bit of a problem with that position, which is not what you want to hear with 5 games to go. But from a Bristol City perspective, the scenes for that goal were exceptional. There's a video the club put out of the fans going mad, which is great stuff. We had Bristol City fan Phil on the second tier Discord who said he was crying after this one, and I'm not blaming him. Whether it was deserved is another question, because West Brom pretty much dominated that second half. Bristol City won't care though, because it's a huge win against a direct rival for the playoffs. And you're absolutely right, Justin. The belief is palpable down at Ashton Gate. It's seen them go 5th. They've got a 3-point cushion keeping them in the playoff places. And I think we've always been of the opinion, Justin, that they may just get pipped to a playoff place, particularly because they had some tough fixtures remaining. But as time goes on, they keep getting results, don't they?
They do, and I think they wouldn't have enough firepower to manage themselves getting into the top 6. But again, if opposition goalkeepers are throwing the ball in the back of the goal from a left-back shot, then you don't need firepower in the final third, do you? You've got a bit of luck on your side, which, that sounds like I'm discrediting what Bristol City have achieved so far. I'm not. I'm really, really pleased for them. And like I said at the weekend, Liam Manning pointed out that you just need wins at this stage of the season. I've said it already in this episode. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter about how good your performance is. You just got to keep that momentum, that muscle memory of winning going. And they're doing it. And obviously, prior to going into this this set of games, we were discussing how hard Bristol City's running to the end of the season were. At the minute, they've got the momentum. It's a positive thing. It's a good thing. And the fact that they've thrown themselves up into the top 6 now and got a 3-point cushion, despite West Brom being in the top 6 for the majority of the season prior to last weekend. The momentum's with them. They're peaking at the right time, and what a time to do it with 5 games to go. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. They look like they are peaking at the best possible time, don't they? 1 loss in 10, and a win like this feels like a big moment in their season. I will say some of their recent performances haven't been superb, but Liam Manning's game management has been seeing them get some big wins, and maybe this is finally their season. For a while, we thought it might be a step too far because they've been a mid-table championship side for years, and going on to get a playoff place all of a sudden is always going to be difficult. But every challenge they faced recently, they just seem to pass it. So I'm becoming a believer. Justin, I always thought Liam Manning would get them in the playoffs eventually, but this may be the first time in 17 years, after a lot of trying, that they actually do secure a top 6 place. Yeah,
it's worth it. So, I mean, they took an almighty risk, didn't they, when they departed with Nigel Pearson last season and brought in Liam Manning. But I think what he's delivered so far, and there was a lot of question marks over him towards the end of last season, if I remember, about whether he's the right man in charge. Results weren't amazing, but like I said, I think they're a team that can really mix it up, and they can mix it up better than a lot of the teams around them. They can play through the thirds. They've got brilliant technical players in the final third to play into and allow them to exploit opposition. Defensively, they're good. They're quick on the transition and they can be direct at times. It's a really good mixed bag of football at Bristol City, and I don't mean that negatively. Again, they can vary their play, and when you can do that, it's the reason why they've only lost 10 games this season, and outside of the top 4, it's a very, very good record to have. So, would like them to score more goals, but Naki Wells is doing it. He's got 3 goals in 4 games now, which is he's on 10 for the season. He's still banging them in. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter if your game management is as good as Bristol City's, I think.
One team a playoff place is looking less and less likely for is West Brom. 3 losses on the bounce now for them, winless in the last 5. I've seen some calling for Tony Mowbray to be sacked, which seems a bit drastic, Justin, but it goes to show that there's a lot of frustration at West Brom around this drop-off which they've had, which in contrast to Bristol City has come at the worst possible time, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think when you look at this season as a whole, even under Carlos Colburn, they were drawing too many games, and I think my only criticism of Tony Mowbray is that the likes of Adam Armstrong haven't really got going yet. And I think how often did we put into terms how Adam Armstrong's going to guarantee goals, and he hasn't. It's been one of those sort of back end of the seasons for West Brom where they're just sort of stuttering at the wrong time. And like I said, they've been in the top six for the majority of the season, and now they're falling away. We're talking about momentum positively for Bristol City. It's working against West Brom at the moment, and for a while I was 99% convinced they were going to get into the top six, but recent performances, I don't think they will now. It's hard to see them recovering. West Brom's away record, for example, under Mowbray is really, really poor. That needs to improve, and you've got 5 games to do it. It's just not enough time.
Yeah, I want to defend Tony Mowbray, but I keep asking myself, am I just biased because he's such a nice guy and I like him? Because they have dropped off at a bad time after being in a good position all season. But I think he has had to deal with a lot of things, in fairness to him, coming in midway through the season, obviously, injuries, and the fact the squad was probably overachieving in the first place under Carlos Corberán, because it's hard to follow up on a guy who's since turned a La Liga club into one of the form teams in the division. So all that's got to be kept in mind. Plus, he can't do much about his goalkeepers repeatedly dropping clangers. This isn't a Daniel Farker at Leeds situation. Mowbray has changed the keeper after a couple of mistakes, and his new keeper's gone and made a mistake as well. So, yeah, it's far from ideal. I don't think it is over yet for West Brom. Yes, they're 5 points off, but on paper, they should be winning 4 of their final 5 games. And they also have to play Coventry as well, which should be seen as an advantage, really, for them. But you'd have to say their playoff chances are fading, and if they don't get a win this weekend, that might be it, unfortunately, for them. And finally, a 91st minute equaliser saw Luton Town get a very late draw away at Stoke in a big relegation 6-pointer. Even more incredible scenes, Justin. The second half has been full of incredible scenes, but this could be absolutely gigantic in Luton's fight to stay up, couldn't it?
No, it could. It's quite weird. I'm not sure if this is a good result or a bad result for either side. I really struggled to nail it down. I think for Luton, from Luton's perspective, they needed the 3 points more than Stoke did. Stoke just needed to keep momentum on the side. So you look at it like that, it's probably a good result.
I'll tell you what I think it is, Justin. I think it's one of those where it's a good result for the teams above and around Luton and Stoke, as opposed to a good result for either of those teams. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But, scoring a last-minute equaliser, momentum-wise, they draw another game. They're unbeaten again. But again, performances don't really matter at this point. It is results. The third time I've said it. It's become a cliche now, but it's so true in a lot of cases for a lot of teams. Luton needed the 3 points. Stoke dropped the 3 points. I think it's both a good point and a bad result for both of those teams. But I think performance-wise from Luton's perspective, it was good. They kept plucking away. The character was there. That would have been a game that just faded out very quickly earlier on in the season, probably just 6 to 7 games ago, actually. But now this new belief is instilled. It's there. You can see it. It's just whether or not it's enough now to get them out of the bottom 3.
Well, this point means they could move out of the bottom 3 this weekend if they win and results go their way. But the more major thing for me is, if you're looking at this from a Luton Town perspective, if you're going to stay up, you obviously need another team to fill your space. And I would say Stoke are one, if not the most likely candidate currently to do that. So if Stoke did get the win here, then that probably wasn't going to happen. Stoke would probably be looking towards safety. So it's a really bad goal for them to concede in those circumstances. Whereas Luton, you're right, it just keeps this unbeaten run going. And with a couple of winnable games coming up, they'll continue to feel very, very encouraged. Justin, we have 5 games to go. And unbelievably, just 3 points separating 17th and 22nd. It continues to be so tight down there, doesn't it? So I thought now might be a good time to ask, what are we saying with the relegation battle? Because I assume we're both in agreement that it's Portsmouth downwards, isn't it? The teams who are involved still. QPR and Swansea just about secured their safety with their midweek wins. You said yes, so we're agreeing on that. Are you sticking with your predictions from 2 or 3 weeks ago of Plymouth, Derby and Stoke, or do you now think someone else is becoming more likelier? What do you think?
Stoke have been really good up until the game, against Luton. I thought their performance has been fantastic, but that performance against Luton just makes me think, actually, you might be right. That being said, Hull's inability to get going and get momentum is another thing, but they're winning the game, losing the game at the moment, so actually that form might just see them through. Portsmouth do worry me. They really, really do concern me. I feel like they just need one more win to secure safety. That being said, 6 points again at this stage, I just don't think is enough. And their performances have been really, really poor of late. Really, really poor. And they've got, just looking at their form now, 4 losses in their last 5 games. That concerns me a hell of a lot. It really, really does. When you're looking at momentum, they're the side that are struggling now compared to everybody else below them. But I would say it is Plymouth, Derby, and I think Stoke will get out of it. Cardiff.
You think Derby?
Yeah, I do think Derby, unfortunately.
You think Cardiff over Derby?
Well, I think they've drawn the last 3 games, Cardiff, so they're a hard side to beat. But again, they need wins at the moment.
Derby are like the form team in the division, aren't they, over the last 6 games?
Yeah, they are. But again, it's those tight games. You look at Swansea at the weekend. Again, the Swansea defeat provides a lot of context. That was a tight game. Derby limited Swansea. It was a good performance from Derby, but concentration at the last moment lets them down. I think if they had a bit more firepower in that final third, they'd be fine. They'd be comfortably fine, but they don't. So teams have a chance against them. I cannot understate how big this game at the weekend is for both Portsmouth and Derby. It will shape their season. It really, really will.
I said 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think my bottom 3 will be Plymouth, Luton, and Oxford. I don't want to just go with who I think will be the bottom 3. I'll shape it like this instead, Justin. I think Plymouth are pretty much gone, aren't they? I think we can pretty much say that with a degree of certainty at this stage. I think Cardiff are now the next most likely to go down. I just think nothing is going their way particularly. They're finding wins particularly hard to come by. So I would say they're now the second most likely team to go down. Then I think the third most likely is kind of a 3-way tie between Luton, Oxford, and Stoke for me. I think Luton have a lot of ground to make up because obviously they're 2 points behind. That doesn't sound like much, but I think it is in the grand scheme of things with 5 games to go. And Stoke, well, they've been down there all season. Will it really be that much of a surprise? And at Oxford, I'm not sure what to make of the 2 wins they've got recently. So I would say that's how I'm looking at it currently. I think Portsmouth, Hull and Derby are kind of in my mind, on a level playing field where I just think they should stay up. I'd be very surprised if any of those 3 were to go down. That's kind of how I'm looking at it now, Justin. Hit me back on that. What do you think?
There's a lot of teams to talk about.
Yeah, keep it brief, please.
They make good points on Oxford. Cardiff, the one that do concern me. They're struggling to get going. I've seen a lot of fans question Omar Rita. I think we discussed that. I was surprised not to see him go around the March international break or before to give Cardiff a chance, because it just feels like tactically he's the most inexperienced amongst that bottom sort of 6 or 7 in the league, and that's that. I think at this stage of the season that counts for a hell of a lot. It really, really does. So Cardiff are the struggle there. With Luton, you are right about the points gap, but again, you're just looking at the quality of that team. I think that will pay dividends with 5 games to go. You've got 15 points to play for. Can't see them
and
winning.
Newfound belief as well.
Yeah, I believe. It's a lot of points to play for, and I think again that can go such a long way. So Derby, Cardiff are the other 2 for me.
I'm not sure about Derby. I wonder if this is just in playing his cynical Derby fan card. But it's going to be fascinating heading into these five final games, because it's finally poised, isn't it? And I can't recall too many relegation battles we've had like this, where there's just so many teams still involved with such little time to go. But it's going to be great. It's definitely going to go down to the wire without a doubt, isn't it?